This presentation is on the so-called J-curve effect, and it's important to understand this because it illustrates that time lags can have an effect on economic variables which may be the opposite of what we expect. So let's start with this graph which shows trade balance of an economy, say UK, on the y-axis against time on the x-axis. Imagine that the trade balance is negative, in other words, imports are greater than exports, and the country is running a trade deficit. So the trade deficit is shown by this blue line, and imagine at some point in time, for some reason the pound depreciates, maybe because UK interest rates fall relative to the interest rates of the Eurozone. We would expect that with the depreciation of the pound, UK exports would become more competitive, and so the trade balance should improve from its negative level to a less negative level. In fact, this is not often what happens. So the curve of trade balance doesn't follow the path that we expect after a currency depreciation. Let's see why not. Imagine that the exchange rate of the pound initially was £1 equals €1. If the pound depreciates, it means the price of the pound in euro will be less. So £1 will only now cost 80 cents instead of €1. When this depreciation happens, a product that was made in the UK and sold for £100,000 would have been selling for €100,000, but now after the depreciation of the pound, the price of that product, say a car, will fall from €100,000 to €80,000. This should mean that the demand for the car goes up and the value of British exports to the Eurozone goes up. However, it takes time for this to happen. It takes time for export customers to change their behavior after the price of UK exports falls. And it is this time lag that explains the J-curve. Imagine that when the exchange rate was £1 equals €1, 2 cars were being sold to the Eurozone, each with a value of £100,000. And with a 1-to-1 exchange rate, £100,000 equals €100,000. So the total value of UK exports to the Eurozone was €200,000. Now imagine that the pound depreciates against the euro to £1 equals 80 cents. But also imagine that Eurozone customers keep buying 2 cars, at least initially. They don't change the quantity of exports that they buy from the United Kingdom. Those cars, which cost £100,000, are now valued at €80,000 each. So if Eurozone customers continue to buy 2 cars from the UK, the total value of UK exports will fall to €160,000. Over time, of course, they may start to buy more cars because the cars are now cheaper. So over time, the number of cars sold in the Eurozone, the number of British cars sold in the Eurozone, should rise, and the export value of the UK to the Eurozone should also rise. However, this takes time to happen. So following a depreciation of the UK pound, what we might see is that because the UK sells the same volume of exports initially to the Eurozone, but at a lower price, the balance of trade of the UK first of all falls, which is the opposite to what we would expect following a pound depreciation, and only slowly does it start to increase before stabilizing at a higher level than it was before. So the path of the trade balance follows a so-called J shape, and this is called the J-curve effect. So what we have seen is that a movement in the exchange rate, in this case a downward movement, a depreciation of the exchange rate, should improve the trade balance, but sometimes, because of time lag effects, the trade balance actually gets worse before it gets better. So this is the opposite to what we would expect, and it gets worse before slowly getting better. And an example of this is the J-curve effect.